Welcome back to School of Speech. We are talking myths, memes, and evidence behind school-based intervention. You know those strategies everyone swears by, but no one can quite trace the source? Yeah, we're going there. I couldn't think of anyone better to unpack all of this with other than Sherry Sancibrian. Okay, she is diving into what the research really says about language intervention, from vocabulary to syntax to narratives, plus the most effective approaches for treating speech sound disorders. And yes, we are finally answering the $1,000,000 question: how much therapy do kids really need? If you have ever wondered what to keep, what to tweak, and what to gently retire, you're in the right place. And as always, School of Speech is offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs through Speech Therapy PD. You won't want to miss this one. So let's get on with the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to School of Speech, the podcast designed for all of us school-based SLPs presented by Speech Therapy PD. I am your host, Carolyn Dolby, and I am so delighted you are here with us today, and you will be too. Each episode of School of Speech really is a chance for us to connect, recharge, and explore practical strategies, fresh perspectives, and a little inspiration to bring it back to our students. Well, we're going to dive into the heart of what we do, which is supporting communication, fostering competence, and really celebrating the impacts that we make every single day. So whether you are tuning in from your car, your classroom, or cozied up at home in that soft clothes, this is your space to learn, to laugh, and really, we want to lead with purpose. Well, today, I'm so excited because we are going to be exploring myths, memes, and EBP, providing effective interventions in the schools. And leading us on this quest, we have Sherry. I knew I was going to do this. Sancibrian. I even know Sherry. And I mean, I don't know why I do that. It's not the way I am. I can't help myself. Sherry is a Grover E. Murray professor and executive associate dean at Texas Tech University at their Health Science Center, where she teaches pediatric language disorders and counseling courses. She is an ASHA Fellow and holds board certification from the American Board of Child Language and Language Disorders. We are in for a tweet. We're in for a treat. Well, we SLPs, we understand the evidence of evidence-based intervention, but there is still a research gap, right, to practice. And with Sherry's insight and expertise, we are going to take on some of the myths and memes that may influence our clinical decisions. All right, all y'all, I want everyone to start settling in for another amazing episode. And don't forget that each episode of School of Speech is offered for 0.1 ASHA CEUs through Speech Therapy PD. Just a little bit more housekeeping. A little of our disclosures. I think I said about Sherry, but I do want to say she is employed by Texas Tech University, and she is the presiding officer of the Texas Speech Language Pathologist and Audiologist Advisory Board. That's pretty cool. Very cool. For me, I'm salaried employee of Portland Public Schools, and I am recently a co-founder of A Place to Start Therapy. And I receive compensation from Speech Therapy PD for hosting School of Speech, my dream job. Non-financial for me, I do consult with school districts for their development of school-based dysphagia support programs, and I volunteer for PD Matters. Who cares about me? Let's get to the good stuff. Welcome, Sherry. How are you?
I'm great. A little cold tonight. Texas decided that it was time for a little winter weather. So
Texas in the house. We'll see if anybody else is from Texas. I know we usually get a lot from Jersey. I have a good friend in Jersey. If you're from Texas out there, come out. Let us know. Let us know. But we've got from California out to Florida. I love it. Ooh, I love Hollywood, Florida. I love that.
yeah.
All right. Since today we are busting myths and debunking memes, because we really want to know, we want to ground ourselves in what really works, right? So I'm wondering if you just want to start us off, is there one myth that makes you go, oh,
Well, it's going to be hard to settle on one, but we'll start with one and take it from
Okay.
there.
Okay.
One myth that I'm not sure if this is a myth that SLPs hold or everybody else holds. The myth that more therapy is always better.
Wait,
Maybe
did
that's one.
did people know
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
myth that more speech is better?
Always, right? So maybe that's not a myth that we hold, but parents, administrators, teachers, you know, if it's a good thing, you want more of it. I believe more chocolate is always better, but more therapy is not always better. So we're going to be talking about how you manipulate the dose, the intensity, the frequency to make sure that you're providing that just right amount of therapy, not driving yourself crazy by providing more therapy than a student really needs.
The Goldilocks, the
Absolutely.
just right, or was it the baby bear? Maybe that's the baby bear.
Well, we're actually going to talk about the Goldilocks zone and staying there. So,
Oh, I love it. I didn't
yeah,
have full. Look at me.
no, but you're right, already thinking in the right way. So that's a big one for me. But there are quite a few that they're just things that have been passed along, maybe from someone who taught you in college, maybe from a supervisor, maybe from a friend. And sometimes we just continue to do things or believe things just because we don't think about it any differently. So another one is that the more feedback to the child, the better. That's another one that's not really true. Sometimes more feedback just makes them shut down or you're interfering. I like to think about every time that I'm talking, I'm taking away an opportunity for that student to get in another trial or another chance to say something. And so sometimes being SLPs, we love to talk. And so we provide too much talking on our side sometimes. So
I'm loving everything I'm hearing.
got that?
Absolutely. I am. I do. Because I'm thinking about how those we constantly feel like we have to talk about. Yes.
Right?
So I
Yeah.
know we're going to get into that. I mean, really the foundation of this entire talk really is about evidence-based, right? And up to date. And you know what? It just dawned on me what we should have asked our live listeners was how long has it been since you've been in college? Right?
True. True. Yeah.
I don't know, live listeners, I am not calling you out on your age, but it would have been fun for us to know how many veteran SLPs we have listening. But I'm not going to do it. I'm just in my head. In my head. All right. Let's start with well, we already started with myths, but maybe talk about what is evidence-based practice. I think we all kind of think we know. Do we know? Do we know?
I know the profession has talked about for a while kind of that three-legged stool of the research evidence is important. And that's not my role. I do a little bit of that, but I'm more a clinician. And these days, kind of sadly, I'm more of an administrator than a clinician. But I've been a clinician for more than 40 years. So there's lots of clinical expertise that I can bring to this three-legged stool. And that's one of the other pieces that's really important. So, when you're fresh out of school, you do know a lot because you just paid a lot of money and spent a lot of time learning all that. But there's so much more to learn. And so that's one of the other circles. And then finally, it's those individual characteristics of the person that you're trying to help. How severe the problem is, what's their age, success of previous therapy, their level of motivation, all of those factors. That's why it's really almost impossible to say this is the correct treatment for this problem because every student sitting in front of you is different than the one that was there an hour ago. And so there's so many variables that it's kind of a moving target sometimes. And it can be frustrating trying to do the right thing and do the best thing when it's not that clear all the time.
And what I'm hearing you say is there really isn't a manual, do this, do that, do this, do that, because again, everybody's an individual. It might work for a lot, but it might not work for everybody. And that's why we are specially designed instruction. That's why the skills for our specialty is needed when needed. Is because we know that we need to be focusing on those nuances that just not every Tom, Dick, and Harry can do. right?
And there's a reason why there's an I in IEP, right?
Uh-huh.
To be individualized, because you're right. What worked for one child an hour ago who looks really similar to the child in front of you now might not work this hour. So, and the key to making this whole stool stand, I think, is that clinical expertise piece. It really is what you just mentioned earlier, unknowingly, that the key variable, what we found is it's that SLP's ability to stay in the Goldilocks zone, the just right space between too hard and too easy. So it turns out that actually there isn't just one right way to do anything. There are lots of things that work, but knowing how to keep adjusting that as the child moves through therapy, that takes some real skill. And no, there is no manual that says take 2 steps forward, take 1 step back. No, that's that clinical judgment piece that we have to develop over time. So shout out to the veterans who've had a lot of time to develop that expertise.
Right. So when we're looking at that evidence-based practice and the 3 E's, as you say,
Mhm.
right? Well, so evidence, which would be the research evidence, right? And then the clinician expertise.
Expertise, uh-huh.
And
And then
then
really there's the variables of that the traits of the person that you're treating. So the 3 E's are related to that evidence base, but they're a little bit different. The 3 E's are efficacy, which is what works under ideal circumstances. I know I won't be able to see you, but you just raise your hand if you work under ideal circumstances. I want to know who you are.
yeah, right, because we want to come work with you.
I have yet to be in ideal circumstances very often at all. So that's the first E. And that's one thing you have to understand is that in a lot of the research articles, they report the efficacy of whatever they were researching. But remember, when we run a research study, most research studies, with a few notable exceptions, are ideal circumstances. They get to control all the variables. It's not like what really happens when you're providing therapy where this kid missed 2 weeks because he was sick. And then, oh, there's a special program today and this happened. And, all the things you can't control. So efficacy is great, but it's not real world. Effectiveness is business as usual. What actually works under our real working conditions. And sometimes the research doesn't really report that. They talk about efficacy. So the effectiveness, a lot of times, is up to us to find what works, what's effective for us. And that's why I think sometimes people are still doing something they've done a long time because it seemed to work. And I think maybe we rely a little too much on that E. It works, so I keep doing it. I'm going to try to encourage you today to think a lot about the third E, which is efficiency. Alan Kamai describes efficiency as when you get something for free. Ooh,
I like it.
who doesn't like free, right?
I love it. You bet.
So if you're treating a speech sound disorder and you treat the S, you almost never have to treat the Z. Usually they're going to get that for free because both of them are wrong, but or sometimes you might choose to treat the Z and you'll get the S for free. So we need to look for ways that can increase our efficiency so we can accomplish the same great outcomes that we've been having, but can we do it with the wisest use of our resources, which includes our own time?
Increase the freebies.
Yep, absolutely. We don't want to sacrifice quality, but we want to use our resources wisely to get to the same point, maybe a little faster with a little less investment of our time.
I like that. I mean, I like that you pointed out that you don't want to affect the quality of work. Yeah, we don't want to just speed through things and miss something. We
Right.
want to have a robust practice, but I like the concept of how can we look at things of what will come for free if we think about things maybe a little differently. I think that's where we're headed. Yeah. So I know that we're going to be wanting to talk about, dose, frequency, intensity in that, but do you think we should could we talk through like the different interventions and then maybe go to that? Does
Yeah,
that make
that sounds good.
Is that kind of okay? Because we're just
Sure.
thinking about like when we're looking at those three E's, we're I'm sure there's a lot of myths when it comes to language and
Mm.
language therapy or language interventions.
Sure.
I guess what do you have? What's the evidence maybe actually say about effective language interventions in the schools? Is it
Well,
something we should be doing more? Something we should retire?
yeah, there are some things that we can change about what we do. So hopefully to be more efficient, but still get those great outcomes. So, for example, one of the myths that has gotten passed down for the generations of SLPs who came before was that working on step commands, 1, 2, 3 step commands, is a great therapy strategy. But actually, the evidence for that is non existent. What matters more is the number of critical elements. Following commands is fine. Kids need to be able to do that. But when I say to you, um, pick up the ball, there are really two critical elements. Pick or pick up and ball is what you have to understand. So I could still make it a one-step command, but I could say, pick up the small blue ball. Now look at the elements that you have to process. Okay. So as opposed to just adding, pick up the ball and then hand it to me, which is a step command, it's really about manipulating those elements that they have to hold on to. So that's one example of something that's just kind of been around for a long time. But when you start to question it, guess what? We really don't have much evidence for it. So, and I think the important thing here is there's multiple reasons, but we're going to look at what we do know about treating language and speech sound disorders for multiple reasons. One is I am sure that lots of you live in a school district with unicorns and roses, and you never have parents who complain, and no one will ever go to due process. But if you live more like where I live, somebody might complain somewhere along the way. And I want you to feel good about defending your choices in therapy, explaining that you are doing best practice, what we know is best practice. So, what we know is best practice in 2025 is not what I learned as best practice in the 1970s. It's changed a lot. And so it can be difficult to keep up. And that's kind of what I see my role as is I like to dig into the literature and find those little gems that help us um, sort of bring our therapy into the current time. So I've got a few ideas for you about things that we do know work. So there's some great researchers out there who've been looking at, for example, we all work on vocabulary, right?
Mm.
But the evidence base says that we can boil it down to just a few small things that if we're sure we do these things, we really do have good evidence that this therapy can be effective. One is to teach vocabulary explicitly. In other words, to actually say to the child, our new word today is anticipate. Anticipate means, and then give a child-friendly definition. So as opposed to just sort of exposing the child to the word, you deliberately call it out. Like, this is a new word that you might not know, and here's what it means. Um, Teaching independent strategies like teaching morphological analysis. Sounds really deep, but
It is.
if a child knows a word like clear, and you can show them this really cool trick that when we add these other little pieces, I call them morphed words because kids understand what that means. Then you also could figure out what unclear means and clearing and cleared, clearly. So you really only have to know that base word. And then guess what? You probably know 10 words. And so they get something for free almost, right? They just have to know how to take those little pieces apart.
I am loving. I mean, I love my job. I love School of Speech so much because I'm just sitting here going, oh my gosh, how much expanding of a vocabulary for free when you do morphed words. And also, I like catchy phrases.
Right.
Morph words, and now they can use the same set on
A lot of different words. Absolutely. And even they love to come up with silly words. So here's a word that one of the kids I work with came up with, unhamburger. What do you think an unhamburger would be?
Okay, so many things. An unhamburger to me could be like um uh ground meat. An unhamburger could be a hot dog.
It could be. In his world, it was Chick-fil-A.
Oh, okay, okay.
Because we're talking about sandwiches, but it showed me he knew what that prefix "un" meant.
And then, it was like, was it, yeah, before?
Not hamburger, but yeah, yeah. And so we do real words, of course, but they love doing silly words. Like, let's see, unsleep. What do you think that would mean?
Oh, oh wait.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's time.
right. Good. And so
Oh,
letting them play with those morphological markers and
it's
just
fun.
how to expand their vocabulary just by adding these little chunks to words. So that's another strategy that has some nice research behind it. A third one is to develop semantic networks. So here's the rule. You never teach a new vocabulary word by itself. You always teach a synonym and an antonym with it, so it has a place to go. Because when you learn a new word, it's like your brain has these, filing cabinets, and I need to know, like, this word fits with what category. So if they're young kids, we don't necessarily talk about synonyms and antonyms, but we talk about examples and non-examples. So we've got a new vocabulary word like marvelous, and I asked my 5-year-old to help me come up with some examples and non-examples. So what he thought was, oh no, the word was fascinating. That's right. Fascinating. He thought bugs, dinosaurs, and castles. But then we had to also do, like, what's the opposite of fascinating? Boring is a great word for that. And math and my brother. Those were his
Yes,
examples,
If
right?
that doesn't bring it home.
Personal experience. But so it builds that network. That word fascinating goes with interesting, and it is not boring. So you already build the network or help them put this away in the right spot, right? So teaching it intentionally, teaching them morphological analysis, but in a very child-friendly way, using semantic networks, and then just making sure that we are teaching them to actually use the words. There is zero research out there that supports working on receptive vocabulary. Zero. They
Okay.
have to produce it.
Okay. Just
So
hearing it isn't going
it's
to,
not enough.
you got to use it. Use
Yep.
it and use it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got to make sure that it's great that we're modeling a lot, but they've got to have a chance to use it.
Yeah. Because then it becomes theirs,
Right. And
right?
letting them tie it to their personal experience, then it becomes something that they own. They've got it. Just hearing it over and over, no, that doesn't really help too much. So I think that those are all really important. One that people tend not to think about is the connection between phonology and new vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to work on emotion words, for example, because a lot of kids with language disorders are not so good at those. And a lot of my little friends have only 3 categories. The emotions are sad, happy, mad. Those are the 3 emotions apparently in the entire world.
Ever.
I'm not going to argue with them. So we're going to take a new word and we're just going to figure out which one of those it goes with. So if we have a new word like thrilled, we're going to play on the phonology piece and put thrilled together with what do you think it sounds like? What do you think that word sounds kind of like? Most kids come up with drilled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But what matters is what they come up with. We're going to go with it, right? And then we make a fun sentence like, my dad was not thrilled when I drilled a hole in the floor.
Now,
So we actually use phonological memory a lot when we store new words. That's why when you meet somebody, 2 hours later, you're thinking, oh, her name started with an L. It had 2 syllables. Was it Laura, Lauren? Yeah, because we use phonology a lot initially to store new words. And so we need to use that. So I do a whole list of emotion words and we listen. So if you think about like a word like exasperated, even, we pick out the egg piece and then we come up with
yep, and came to my head.
egg, right? Yeah. So, and sometimes the kids come up with something that's not obvious to me, but it's whatever they come up with. So that's another thing that we have nice evidence for, that if we connect phonology with semantics, we improve their vocabulary.
I love it. this is, I mean, well, every day's a brand new day for me, but but I
There's just
love
so
you.
much out there.
But what you just laid on us, mm, might seem simple, like just like if I just wrote them down, they're not. These are huge freebies.
Yeah.
These are
There are
huge
things you
freebies.
couldn't easily do. It's not going to cost you anything
Right.
to do these things, but there's actual evidence to show that these treatment strategies really do change vocabulary.
And really getting us thinking about why I could now explain exactly why I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Why am I doing morphology? Why am I doing more words? Well, because I'm going to build the vocabulary much faster when we can on a new word, one word can give us 10 new words.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's huge when you
Yeah,
just
they're
when you
not all
understand.
words, right? When you see how they're all connected, plus that when you're doing that, you're also building that network for them. And the last one that has really good evidence is um, analogical strategies like maps. So doing semantic maps, that kind of thing. So anything that lets you categorize, group features, that kind of thing. So all of those have been shown to be effective in some pretty well controlled research studies. Plus, they're just things I've used for a long time too. So I have that clinical, yes, it does work kind of
Mhm.
experience with it.
And none of these need anything. Like materials,
Yep.
is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not needing a manipulative. I mean, visuals are great. I'm not discounting visuals,
Right.
of course, but I'm just thinking like you're not needing anything. I remember once being told that you should be able to do speech therapy out of your purse. And I mean,
Absolutely.
but,
Yeah.
but kind of if you think about, oh, I got a pen. Okay, well, I got a little notepad.
Yeah. You don't have to run out and buy anything to do those strategies, right? You look around
No.
the room, pick up a book you have, get some Play-Doh out, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, all of that is stuff that you can do with the basic materials that you would already be using. So everybody's got a set of emotion cards, so I use those
Mhm.
and add that phonological component. And so we're working on a social skill and new vocabulary and phonological awareness all at the same time. So we're both
All boom.
really efficient, right? Yeah.
I love
So
it.
that same 30-minute block, I get a lot more done when I combine it. So
All right. So that was seriously, I think those were 5 strategies for building vocab.
yeah,
Teaching it explicitly. I love morph words.
yeah,
Semantic network. Use it or lose it. That's how I'm going to remember that one. And
yeah,
then maps, the group features. So
yep,
there's 5 strategies. Boom, chakalaka, right there on
yeah,
just really elevating your vocab.
yep.
Um, What about, like, other areas of language, like syntax? Where do we
So morphosyntax, we do have some nice evidence that says if we do, again, explicit instruction in the grammar, that it actually does work as long as you don't do too much of it, because I think kids tune out. So actually teaching, for example, past tense ED and explaining that it means it already happened, I think that's really important. The research says you'll do best to start with drill and then move to having it be embedded. But there's a little catch to that. One thing that people don't think about is that, for example, if we were going to teach the past tense ED in English, we have 3 allomorphs. So 3 different ways we pronounce past tense, right? So if the word ends in a voiceless consonant like walk, we just add t. So walked, right? If it ends in a voiced consonant like hum, then you add duh, hummed, right? But if it ends in T or D already, you can't add T or D, so we have to add a whole syllable. So like invented, ended. So what the evidence shows is that we need to teach one allomorph at a time. Don't mix it up.
Oh.
Ah, And out of those three, you have to use your knowledge of phonology to think about which of those three would be the most salient to children. And it turns out that the one that's a whole syllable is much more salient, much more noticeable for them. So ended is a lot clearer to hear that ending than walked, right? That's, first of all, it's a cluster. It goes by really fast. So you start with that. Then we have to think about more what we know about phonology. And we know that voiced sounds at the ends of a word, especially a voiced cluster, would be kind of hard. So that means we're going to go from the syllabic form to that voiceless T form, the like walked, right? Missed, stopped, those kinds of words. And then finally to the voiced ones like bold, played, those kinds of words. So you teach each allomorph individually before you start mixing them. And you'd like to have at least 12 exemplars for each one of those versions of past tense. So teach those 12, then move on to the next one, then move on to the third one. Then you can mix them.
I love it. Hey, you know how we said there wasn't like a step-by-step? You just gave us a step-by-step. I love it.
Sometimes the first step, but I know where it's right.
No, hey, I'm going to take it where we can get it, and I'm taking it.
Yeah.
But the way that you just explained it to me was, I'm like, I want to put in a little shame face, like, I should have figured that out. That, you know what? Hey, no shame in my game.
Nope.
It's not too, we're not too old to learn new things.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You really be changing it up the whole time you practice, right? For one thing, I'd get really bored if I kept doing the same thing all this time. And then I just want to make sure that I'm doing, the best that we know at the moment, which you can't waste any time thinking about something you wish you had done differently 5 years ago. It's just about now. What do we know? So we do know that these things actually work and that there's a way to do it. So I have two more little like, wow kinds of things.
I'm down for wow.
Okay, so here's something I didn't really think about until I read the research on it. And this research suggests that a great way to introduce a verb is to use it surrounded by pronouns, like he kicked it, she played that. Rather than actual, nouns and verbs that make a picture in your head, it really lets the verb stand out as the most important word in that sentence.
Oh, right. Rather than Tom kicked or I like that. But you're also
right?
then
It's pretty short, but you can really focus on the verb. He kicked it, right? And then maybe you do a bunch of he blanked it, he played it, he whatever you want to do. But yeah, so that was a one that was really different. And I'm thinking that research has been out for 20 years and I only caught up with it about 5 years ago. So, hey, it's hard to keep up with everything that comes out, but I think that one's pretty cool. Another one that it hasn't been out that long, maybe 6 or 7 years, was the idea that kids do better when they're learning verbs if we start with some atelic, meaning ongoing verbs. So we have telic verbs and atelic. A telic verb, I can say, show me one jump, show me one bite. But I can't say, show me one sleep, show me one think, show me one, it's another one that, you can't do it once. So show me one run. So they do better with the verbs that are ongoing, like run, sleep, swim. Those verbs seem to be really important in helping them just catch the concept of a verb.
Right. Doing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, as opposed to something that's one and done, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's a kind of simple thing. The other thing is when you're choosing your verbs, this principle of desirable difficulty comes in. And there are lots of everyday verbs that, of course, we think kids need to know. But somewhere in there, throw in some kind of harder verbs. By that, I mean something that's a less common verb, maybe like squish, or verbs that are phonologically difficult, like sag or raise. because they have that voice consonant at the end of the word, which makes it a little harder for kids to produce. That little bit of difficulty sometimes means that the acquisition is a little slower, but the generalization and the stick to it really is strong when you make it just a little bit harder. So little harder is worth doing. So put some of those little more difficult words in there. Plus words like squish are so interesting.
I know. Well, of course, I'm such a kid. So I was like, I so do that one.
Think of
I
all the
like
things.
that desirable difficulty.
Yep.
I love that term.
Yeah. Well, think when we're learning, if it's not a bit of a challenge, it's really easy to get bored and tune out.
Mhm.
You want it to be, within that zone of proximal development, not super hard, but a word that's appropriate for their age, but a little less common and or a little harder to say. Maybe it's a multisyllabic verb as opposed to a single syllable word.
Well,
So,
the one word that I will never forget and might have to be on my tombstone, but it's discombobulated.
oh, yeah.
Because, my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Van Buskirk, shout out to you. She taught us that word, and oh my gosh, I think all of us from my elementary went to sixth grade, so all of my Montclair Elementary School, we all say it. I mean, that we'll never forget that word, discombobulated.
Those, it's a harder word, hard to
Yes.
say, not one you would hear all the time, but you know what? It actually sticks in your brain. So
It did. It made an impact, and we thought it was fun to learn a really big word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my top tips for morphology, but another big area that we address a lot is narrative, of course.
Yeah.
So there's actually been some nice research on more than 40 different studies out there on teaching narrative. And when you summarize everything that they have to say, these are some things that seem to determine whether or not the therapy was very effective and efficient. One, if you can find something that's kind of got a manualized curriculum, like Story Champs is one that a lot of people use, but there are multiples out there, right? This is not new, but the opportunity for them to produce their own narratives. So again, it's receptive is not enough. They've got to practice making stories, telling stories.
I had Carol oh my gosh, how did I just Carol Westby. I don't know what
Westby.
happened to me.
Yeah.
She was on last season, and she talked about the importance of being able to produce a self-narrative.
A
the
personal
impact.
narrative. So yes. For the resilience for children, that's so important that they can tell their story.
Yes.
Yeah. That's something that, I feel like, when you're working with kids that they have so many things stacked against them, that is one gift we can give them is we can teach them to be able to tell their story. It's such a powerful thing. And it's something you'll do the rest of your life is tell your personal narratives. So I think narratives are really important.
So, personal narrative versus a story retell.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
So
then
we've
we're
got,
talking. Yeah.
yeah, so we've got, in under the big umbrella of discourse, we've got story retell and we've got personal narratives and we've the expository textbook kinds of being able to retell what you understand from the textbook. So, and all of them are important, but you won't always be talking about textbooks. And I think the personal narratives are something you'll do your entire life. So that's a good place to spend some therapy time. And school expectations, of course, include story retell and expository too.
And we got a question. I think it might be a big question
Okay.
for tonight, which means we might have to just bring you back on. It says, Sam, thank you. Saying this is great. Language therapy can also feel like it is a big domain, Sam.
It's huge.
They are asking, do you have suggestions on how to select targets? Well, I think you, with your strategies there, Sam goes on, it often feels like, for example, focusing on conjunctions feel like such a small piece to the larger picture, especially for older students in middle school.
Mhm. Well, that's true, but I often do that because it's really not about the conjunctions. It's about teaching them to expand the noun phrase or expand the verb phrase. So when you're teaching them subordinating conjunctions, you're actually teaching them to be able to use dependent clauses. And so there's so much more to it. The conjunction is just a tool that they get to use. So I know it can feel small. And maybe when you write your goal, the goal is really to expand the noun phrase, or in this case, it would probably be the verb phrase by using a variety of subordinating conjunctions. Because to write at middle school and high school level, you cannot write all simple sentences. That's not going to cut it.
And
With
because
and with it's only conjunctions, right? So I actually have like a visual square where they're on there. These are your choices. So we have like the temporal ones and the adversatives, and they have to choose 4 conjunctions. And we're going to write something today, and we're going to see if you can use all 4 of those, right? And sometimes they don't get them right, but just learning to use those words. So
thank you for that question, Sam, actually, because it really, I think what it brought to light is how you explained that the conjunction isn't actually the goal. You're making us think bigger, broader, better.
right, right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
so it may be that your big overarching goal is for that child to be able to construct a narrative. Under that, you can't really write a narrative or an expository piece about your science project if you are going to write totally in simple sentences. So to be able to not do that, you have to know subordinating conjunctions and how to use them. So it's really not the tiny piece that it might sound like.
Yeah, no. I love it. You're broadening our practice. Like, let's look at the bigger picture. I love it. Ada jumped in and they said that they use narrative practice in conversational contexts with their elementary and middle schoolers by tying it to WH questions, which they call it the background brief. Which they also use to address building richer sentences when their sentences are way too simple for their age. I like that. Thanks, Ada. Yeah. And for medical reports or even in schools, they justify it as they need to be able to tell a narrative when something happens to them or around them. Oh, absolutely. There's
Absolutely.
your
Yeah.
there's your defense.
That's that personal narrative that you
Mhm.
have to be able to tell your story,
Yeah.
Why that our kids are the ones who didn't start it, but they get in trouble because they always get caught, right?
Yes.
Defend themselves because they don't have the words. So that's a big gift we can give them.
Well, and I know, I mean, we could spend days on strategies for language and thank you so much for everything that you've already given us. And I know it's just the tip of the iceberg, but I also know that I'm looking at time and I know we also want to talk about speech sound production and evidence-based in there. Maybe I can move us there.
It's
Next
fine.
time, I'm going to beg you to come back for next season.
And we could delve into some of this a little bit more. So I'm just going to, like one of the things that really stands out to me because I did train a long time ago is that, those of us who went to school this many years ago were taught in a very traditional kind of hierarchy for how we worked. And you know what? Things have moved on. And now more people are using what I would consider a more modern approach to speech sound disorder. There's a new motor learning hierarchy. So instead of the old sound in isolation, sound in syllables, sound in words, sound in phrases, sentences, it's not that pyramid that I learned when I first entered this field. In this new motor learning hierarchy, which is based on motor theory across all kinds of motor skills, they start out with an establishment phase where you're getting the sound in isolation and syllables up to about 80% correct. And then, hold on, because it gets real weird here.
Okay.
They move to what they call concurrent treatment, meaning there is no hierarchy. You randomize the targets across all the difficulty levels in one session. You don't have the same expectation, of course. You expect better performance at single words than you do in sentences, but you include several different levels of production difficulty in one session. You know what that does for you? It improves generalization greatly because going step by step by step, we know that you've just worked and that child just made a beautiful S sitting right in front of you, and they go to the door and they say, "See you next time." And it just breaks your SLP heart. So this is an example of that desirable difficulty. So yeah, we're not just going to let them work in what sort of their comfort zone, like what's the thing they can do pretty well. So I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. Um, the other thing is effectiveness and efficiency for speech sound disorders. There's so many choices. I know it's overwhelming, but do you know what it boils down to? Judy Garrett said it years ago, and the current research says the same thing. It's not so much the therapy, not so much the strategy, it's choosing the right target.
That's huge, though. How?
Yeah. So it's understanding speech sound development and difficulty enough to really carefully think about your targets. So, for example, I'm going to choose. I know this is going to sound like, oh, this sounds really weird, but when I choose the sounds, it's not just because the child needs that sound. I'm planning for generalization already. So, for example, if the child needs to work on their S, I'm going to teach it in final because for some kids it's actually easier, and I expect that to generalize to any other fricatives that they have in error. Um, I'm going, of course, we usually just teach only one member of a cognate pair. So that's why you teach the S or the Z and you get the other one for free.
Yeah.
Um, and then here's that desirable difficulty again. If you've got one of those rough and tumble kids who can take it, doing something hard, I'm going to teach the FL cluster really early in therapy because there's a thing called sonority principle, and it has to do with the difference between an F and an L, how different those sounds are, so many features different, that tends to generalize to all kinds of other clusters because it's one of the hardest. If they can work on it, they tend to just pick up several for free.
Micro.
Is this?
So, Jim, I am just loving this. So the FL cluster, you do that. I'm just want to make sure because it is the hardest one to learn, but it has all the different. They're so far different.
Yeah, they learn so many features by
Features of it.
having these two sounds that are so different, right? You've got a voiceless fricative, you've got a voiced liquid. They're made in entirely different places, so they're very different. And by putting those two sounds together, if they can do it, they learn a lot. So if you take a different cluster like ST, think, well, S and T are only one feature different. That's not teaching them much. But if they can do it, now I do have my little friends who are so reluctant that I wouldn't ever do this to them. So that's again those individual factors.
Know
Like,
your people. Know your
right?
audience, they say. Sorry, know your
Uh,
audience.
yeah, exactly. You think that this is a kid who can handle that, right? So
You are just I'm nerding out. That's what I love about being a speech pathologist is that this is a profession where we are paid to be nerds and to nerd out and really get excited about these small little minute things that just get lost in other people. But for us, we're like, okay, that just changed my life.
you know you're an SLP when you geek out about this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
What did you? I was trying to write it too.
it's
Ada
called
Dawson.
sonority principle, right? Yeah. So like L is a sonorant, right? You can make that full for as long as you can have air, right? Where the F is being a fricative is not a sonorant. So they're very different. It's just when we break it down into all their distinctive features, they're like 5 features different, which is a big difference. So yeah.
All right.
So now that we don't have much time, maybe we better talk about is more therapy always better?
Yeah, because I know everyone's leaning in for that one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because that's not really true. Oh, here's another thing. This is what I want you to remember when people don't want you to do groups because they need, this kid needs individual, and there are a few kids who need it. I get that, but like if I were a parent, I'd tell you my kid needs individual just because I want all of your time. So there is some nice research that shows, especially when we're working on language, that groups are more effective because it's kind of like you and your bestie where you share information and you don't both have to remember everything. That distributing the cognitive load, those are the magic words. Groups help the child, and you are distributing the cognitive load because it's a shared cognitive load. The whole group is working together to retell the story or to make a mind map about these new words. And that's actually more effective than putting all the burden on one child.
The first thing that came to mind would be like if they were stuck on something, then you're stuck on something. Whereas if they all you needed, like if you're I was just thinking sitting with my sister recalling of like what we did last night, something like that. And like, oh, what was the name? And then you just say one thing and then you're like,
And there's somebody else who can help out. It's like phone a
Mhm.
friend right next to you and you don't have to.
phone and friend.
So yeah, so that's the reason why groups are actually a really good idea for many situations. But so when we talk about, is more therapy always better? Treatment intensity is something that we have to think about. So the pieces of treatment intensity, one piece is the dose. That's the number of sort of active ingredients in a session. Think about that as the number of opportunities that that child has to do whatever it is he's supposed to do. So number of trials, essentially. So just like you take 2 pills a day, they're going to get 20 opportunities in a session to produce their word, answer a question, whatever your goal is. So that's dose. Frequency is the number of times therapy is provided, typically per week. So how often do they take that dose, in other words? And then duration is how long is this child going to be in therapy? If we put all that together, we're going to get a total intensity. And Laura Justice and her colleagues, Mary Beth Schmidt, another good Texas friend of mine, found that guess what? Having a high dose and high intensity was actually the worst situation. They got the worst outcomes. High dose, high intensity, or high frequency.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, I'm not getting it. Okay. So if
So,
you have high dose, which means trial,
right.
and high frequency all the time.
Yeah. So you're doing this like 4 days a week with lots and lots of trials.
Okay.
That actually turned out to be the worst. So what you want is either high frequency. If you can see a child 4 days a week, props to you. That's great. But they need small doses because you can only handle so much. So if
Oh,
you're doing like 5-minute speech 4 days a week, great. But you don't want to see a kid 4 days a week for an hour each time. That's going to give you a whole lot of dose, right? That's too much. So the ones that work the best were either high frequency, so a lot of sessions per week with low dose, or high dose but low frequency. You get a lot done, but maybe you only see them once a week. The ones where we did too much, it was kind of wasted. They did not make more progress than the kids in the other situations. And in fact, at some point, some of those kids actually responded poorly. I think it was just too much.
and I am very familiar with the 5-minute speech, and I do like that. I like the concept, and I think it makes sense. For some of our kids, a lot of our kids that are a couple of sounds, a sound or something, doing that. I want to investigate a little bit more about. Okay, so 5-minute speech is high frequency, low dose. I
Right.
want to think about more about what if it is high dose, low frequency.
So you only see them one time a week, but you get a lot of trials in. So maybe you get to see them, for 40 minutes and you work the whole time and get a lot of trials in there. So if you're needing to see the child less often, you just got to make sure that you get a lot of trials in.
Mm-hmm. And again, one or the other is not what we're saying is right. It's really specific to the student too, because not all students can handle high dose, low frequency. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. So it's got to be individualized and decide, but just know that when you try to provide too much therapy, which is like 4 times a week for an hour, it's actually not effective. So
I'm putting in you mentioned Laura Justice. Do you have the name of the article by any chance?
no, but look for Justice et al. 2017.
Okay, let me put this. I'm going to just put that in the chat. We'll look it up.
Yeah.
Because I think
It should be on the
also-
reference list.
Oh, then I have that. Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've done several follow-ups, but they continue to find the same thing. So
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, um, where do we? Okay. I know we have a few more minutes. I want to get as much as I can out of you as we can because it's amazing. Oh, Sarah, thanks for jumping in. She does your high dose, low frequency.
Yep.
She does 25 minutes with really high trials. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks a lot. I love it. Um, all right. Let's see. Sometimes, yes, asking if we can have the resource list that references. Absolutely. I have that and I will make sure that we get that out. Because I know you gave us a really great reference, a list of references that we have. So yes, thank you, KK, for asking. The answer is yes. I come from a place of yes. And so I will find a yes to every request. I love it. So yes to everybody.
Right.
But okay, wait. I had a question. Now I can't remember what it was. I'm sure it was profound.
I'm sure.
What can we? Okay, so I think we're so loving the thought of either doing a high dose, low frequency, high dose, whatever. But what if our hands are tied, and due to we're working in a system that's broke,
Yep.
do the best we can.
I mean, do what we've always done,
Mhm.
which is make the best of it, right? So,
Mhm.
because where I live, it's very rural, and so it's entirely likely the SLP is only in the building 1 day a week.
Right.
There is no option for high frequency. So that means that it's low frequency. She's just got to make sure there's not a wasted moment and that you find ways to get extra trials. So here's an example. I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
here's one of my cheats for how you get more bang for your buck.
Mhm.
And carrier phrases for our tick, right? For years, right? So that's fine. But here's how I change that up so that I get more out of it. So let's say that your target is ch, right?
Mhm.
So when I set up my carrier phrase, I'm going to put ch in the carrier phrase. Choose the chair, choose the church, right? If it's S, I'm going to say see the seal, see the saw, right? So I get at least 2 productions for every single thing they say. So it's learning to how can you be super efficient and make sure that almost every minute of therapy really counts.
What I love about this job and hosting this is when I have someone on like you that I feel stupid because you just said something like, I absolutely love it. Because I'm like, that makes the most sense. So in your carrier phrase, use the sound
target.
that is your target. Use your target as part of the carrier phrase and
Yeah.
whom you've just doubled your trials.
Yep. That's right.
So there you go. There you go. There's one more. I love it.
So, yeah. So it's just learning how to just make every minute, just milk it for all you can get out of it, right? But it takes, I think, I've done this a really long time. So that's actually not a really evidence-based strategy. That's just called very experienced clinician strategy.
Hey, but that's part of evidence-based. Are there any, I mean, we still have some time, if it's okay, to give us any other little tips and tricks with sound production. So we've got put your target in your carrier phrase. We talked about groups. Uh, you talked about I like doing your FL cluster. I'm just trying to think of everything you
Yeah.
said.
Plan for generalization. Take a look at the work that's being done on speech motor training. If you haven't looked at that, just Google it. You'll find the work. They're doing it at Syracuse University. And I also talk a lot about AI. And so that these folks are doing a great project using AI. They have 170,000 plus productions of R because, back when I went to school, we were taught there were 2 ways to make R, and then there were 7 ways, and then there were 31 ways, and then, oh, guess what? Oh, no wonder kids don't learn R. So they have collected all of these samples, and then what they've done is turn it into kind of a biofeedback. system where the child can practice outside of therapy, and it does like what they love in the video games. It levels up. So every time you're doing well, it gives you the next level of kinds of words to say. So I think there are going to be some tools out there that AI is going to really help us with to save time. And that would be one of them. If I had a little something that a child could do it as home practice, or, if I've got multiple kids working on different things, if I could have this child working on R while somebody else I get a little individual time with for the S or whatever I need to. So I'm hopeful for what we could do with AI just to stretch, our limited resources as far as we can.
And I know that there's been a lot of talks on AI and how to use AI and how to use AI ethically.
Mhm.
I think it's and I love AI, and I also, I mean, I think sometimes we fear things that we don't know. And I think again, it's important to always think the evidence based and what's the research say, be as well read and understand what you're doing. But I think AI is definitely a time saver for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a lot of work coming out of that as well. I always like, okay, if the SLPs are going to leave and just do one small change, not a big leap, but what do you think might have like the biggest impact?
Oh, I think it may just be the way that we think about language therapy and understanding that there's so many opportunities to combine morphology, syntax, phonology, and semantics all in one therapy session, all kind of in one activity. You can do shared interactive book reading and work all of that stuff in there. And so you've spent, 20 minutes sharing a book and you've hit all your goals. So I think it takes time to plan that out, I think. But once you're used to doing it, uh, you really can save yourself some time as opposed to working on each thing in silos.
And I think that's kind of one of my biggest takeaways is how all these little nuggets that you've given. I got that word from you, Sherry, that just said, sorry, Sherry just jumped in and said, you're so, to you, Sherry.
Oh,
Sherry, or that might be Cherry. Sorry if I said your name wrong. You're so knowledgeable, and I agree. And I can't believe how many fascinating, worthy nuggets you provide. And you really have. Like, I have taken notes and notes, copious, and I just can't wait to bring it back. But my biggest takeaway is really thinking about what is your biggest bang for your buck. How are you going to get the biggest freebies? Working on, work smarter, not harder, I think is how they say. But
yeah,
yeah,
I love
so
that definition. Effective is getting something for free, or efficiency, right? Lots of things are effective, but they take longer, maybe. So how can we get
do
the
it
same results?
right. And do it.
Just use our resources wisely, and the resources we have. Sometimes some therapy materials, but mostly it's our time.
And ourselves, we're the resource. And how can we make it easy on us?
Mm,
Right.
Yep.
But still be effective. I'm not saying like do things
Right.
easy because it's easy. No. But finding ways to do things more effectively is actually going to be better for us, and we'll be better clinicians because we'll have more time
Yeah.
to do even more. All right, Sherry, I cannot believe I don't want to let you go. I mean, I really don't.
We'll
This has
just
been
have to do it
amazing.
again. Yeah.
Well, we are. Oh, I've already got 2 ideas that I'm gonna hit you up about because I think this is phenomenal, and I know that all my listeners out there have just really enjoyed it. And thank you so much. I do want to thank everybody that's with us live. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a like, leave us a review, share School of Speech with your fellow colleague. Don't forget that you can earn 0.1 ASHA CEUs. I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much. Sherry, I know it's later in Texas than it is in Oregon. So thank you so much for spending your evening with us. This is amazing. And I am not going to forget that I'm going to share your resources, your references, because
Right.
I think there's a lot that we want to go back and read because evidence is where we're at. So, all right, guys, thank you so much. Until next time, see you guys later. All right.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. Remember to go to speechtherapypd.com to learn more about earning ASHA CEUs. We appreciate your positive reviews and support and would love for you to write a quick review and subscribe. If you have indicated that you are part of the ASHA registry and entered both your ASHA number and a complete address in your account profile prior to the course completion, we will submit earned CEUs to ASHA. Please allow 1 to 2 months from the completion date for your CEUs to be reflected on your ASHA transcript. Hope to see you on our next episode. Also, please don't hesitate to tell us which topics you would like us to cover in future episodes. To get in touch, drop us a line in the comment section or send us a message on social media.